Anyway, so that's Henry Cuellar, which got this big ups by AIPAC for his support for Israel in the wake of this Amnesty International report coming out of the UK branch that says Israel is an apartheid state, which is true. Israel is an apartheid state. Here's what Rivka Brown said for Novara Media. Besides weaponizing anti-Semitism, what's scary is how well the Israeli state has learned the language of progressives, privileging identity politics, lived experience, and pseudo-intellectualism, complexity, and nuance over universal principles and moral absolutes. Israel and the UK came out with this take saying, Amnesty International's report is a shameful misrepresentation of Israel's diverse and dynamic society. As a proud democracy, we look for nuance, but found only falsehood and distortion. This anti-Semitic report recycles lies instead of seeking truth and consolidates bad faith attacks from those who seek to demonize the state of Israel. While citizens can speak from lived experience. Why don't we center ourselves in this conversation? Why don't we center my lived experience? It's so up sweaty. All citizens can speak from lived experience about the challenges we face as we try to create a better society. We need to amplify these voices. We should center people who passionately and openly reflect the complexity and nuance of Israeli society, as opposed to focusing on the erroneous and damaging reports that attempt to delegitimize Israel. It's a sad truth that if Israel were not a Jewish state, Amnesty would not employ such vicious smears against us. Like, are they trying to say that Amnesty International is anti-Semitic or something? Israel-Palestine is not a complex conflict. It is straightforward. Apartheid, lived experience is not a condition of participating in a struggle. Of course, lived experience only matters when supporters of Israel decide it does. What about the lived experience of the Salhia family who just had their home demolished? Or that the home of the diaspora Palestinians whom the era terrorizes into silence? Israel is a state, boys. If you're new here, if you haven't heard my takes on it before, Israel is a state. And states oftentimes do really violent shit, okay? Like all the time. That's just what states do. You don't have to defend it. You don't have to unconditionally offer support to the state of Israel. Unless you're a Democratic Party representative or a Democratic Party senator, in which case you literally have to for some fucking weird reason. Like unless you demonstrate fealty. I don't know why they think they have to. It's like they don't have a gun to your head. For some fucking weird reason, the American Congress has decided to do that, okay? But if you, an average citizen, whether you live in Israel or whether you live anywhere else on the planet, whether you're Jewish or not Jewish, do not have to straight up bend the knee to the state of Israel and just like defend it unconditionally. It is very, very weird. It is incredibly disproportionate. The violence that the Palestinian people are subjected to is disproportionate. It's one of the worst fucking crimes against humanity. Okay, it's just a horrible ongoing. You can like bodies and spaces or like pro-LGBTQ your way out of this convo, but it doesn't matter. It's so ridiculous. Like all these fucking supposedly pro-free speech Andes literally like pass legislation where you have to sign a waiver that says you'll never support BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions on Israel as a movement. Like you can't support pro-Palestinian movements if you want to be hired as a fucking teacher in a public school. I mean, yeah, there are plenty of Jewish people that are anti-Zionist. There are plenty of Jewish people that live in America that are pro-Palestinian rights and pro-Palestinian liberties. I've had one of them on the show multiple times, Felix Biederman. It's ridiculous to try to turn all Jews into a monolith. Noam Chomsky, Norm Finkelstein, there are plenty of them, yes. So apparently, Amnesty International Germany basically said because Germans did the Holocaust and killed millions of Jews, they cannot comment on this Amnesty report about apartheid in Israel. That is like Amnesty International Germany are saying the systematic annihilation of Jewish people was planned and carried out in Germany. Violent anti-Semitic attacks, destruction of property, and conspiracy theories are present in Germany at an unsettling peak. Thus, a certain responsibility arises for the German Amnesty Division. In the national context, current or historical. We literally joked about this with Felix, remember? Basically, every argument, once someone says anything about Israel here in Germany, yes, exactly. But yeah, Felix and I, if you remember, literally joked about this very specific thing about how Germans are, you know, for good reasons and for understandable reasons, like very scared about coming across as anti-Semitic, you know, because of the whole World War II thing. That was a big deal, if you guys recall. In order to counteract the danger of exploitation or misinterpretation of the report, the German Amnesty Division will not schedule or conduct any activities concerning this report. Incredible.
Our findings and criticism are directed not at the Jewish people, but at the Israeli state. It's the Israeli state that put in place the policies that implement the laws and the practices that oppress Palestinians.
Well, Israeli leaders have been clear about their intentions from the beginning. In 1948, just before he became the first Prime Minister of Israel, Ben-Gurion visited Lifta and other Palestinian areas near Jerusalem that were completely emptied of Palestinian residents following attacks by Jewish forces. He stated, "There are no Arabs, 100% Jews. If we persist, it is quite possible that in the next 6 or 8 months there will be considerable changes in the country, very considerable, and to our advantage." More than 70 years later, then Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu posted on Instagram that Israel is not a state of all its citizens, but rather the nation-state of the Jewish people and only them.
Like, what's up? That is literally just a theocratic apartheid state. That's what that is. That's crazy. Like, it's so strange, dude. It's so fucking strange that we have this sort of attitude where it's like, no, it's only, what do you think is only like something that white people are capable of saying and doing? Like, what's up? You could just like say it out loud if you're Jewish and you are the Prime Minister of Israel. Like, it's just a completely insane fucking thing that we avoid. No, that's just a whites only thing, dude. Does the current Israeli government agree with this? Of course they do. What do you mean? Israel and America are, obviously partnered up, okay? They are completely aligned on their Middle Eastern policies and all that sort of stuff. The closest comparison that you can make is that the Israeli government across the board is reactionary and anti-Palestinian in the same way that the American government is. There's always bipartisan consensus in America when it comes to fucking blowing Muslim countries up, okay, and extracting the natural resources of other nations. There's always bipartisan support for the American State Department engaging in these sorts of actions. There's always bipartisan support for the Department of Defense engaging in these violent actions, and there's always universal consensus in Israel as well. There are very few voices that stray away from that. So much so that we move on to, settlements, settler terrorism. Is that acceptable? Is it not acceptable? And that position has shifted rightwards as well. That ratchet effect that we talk about here in the United States of America very much exists in Israel in nearly in the exact same capacity. There's a huge divide between American diaspora Jews and Israeli Jews, huge increase in conservative liberal division. Yeah, I think so too. I think like the Israeli Jews have become more and more reactionary under the Bibi Netanyahu government, where like there's still resilience, there's still resistance against it.
It's no surprise that Israel built a system of racially discriminatory laws, policies, and practices that privilege only Jewish people. And Palestinians, well...
This is a wild fucking video from Amnesty International UK, because this is the type of shit that, like, you can't show this in Germany, I don't think. I think this probably will not be shown in Germany. Saying Israel is an apartheid state is, to some degree, by, like, the ADL and whatever. I think the ADL is some of the people that absolutely believe this, where they consider this to be anti-Semitic. Dude, please, American Jews here in Israel are some of the most reactionaries ever. Most of them are from Florida, man. I wish I had a Jewish friend from Florida who told him that I'm better off because they came here. Imagine if I said that to a black person in the U.S. Wait, first of all, yeah, I know that, like, dude, what do you mean? American Jews that go to Israel are, of course, they're going to be fucking reactionary. What are you talking about? Like, they literally ride or die so hard. They decided to fucking go and live in Israel. Half of those motherfuckers go and live in settlements, dude. What do you mean? Like, there are so many people that literally just leave America to go to Israel to not even live in, like, the occupied state, the occupied Israeli territories, but instead to just, like, take it one step further and literally are personal colonizers, dude, on the settlement side. Yeah, no shit. American Jews are definitely conflicted on this, and a lot more open-minded to Israel being an apartheid state, especially when they're young, especially younger American Jews are a lot more open-minded to recognizing the Israeli state as a corrupt and incredibly violent government than the older, more reactionary American Jews are. Jewish settlements right here, and then Palestinian land before 1948. Before Nakba, we got 70% of the population is Palestinian.
Israeli authorities acted to turn the situation on its head and were responsible for the mass expulsion of Palestinians and the destruction of hundreds of villages, forcing around 800,000 Palestinians out of their homes and lands. Today there are around 6 million Palestinian refugees who Israel denies the right to return to their homes. After the 1967 war, Israel occupied the Palestinian territories of the West Bank, including East Jerusalem and Gaza. Israel's brutal military rule, coupled with the establishment and expansion of illegal Jewish settlements, has coerced Palestinians into enclaves, creating further fragmentation and segregation. The objective? Maintain Jewish-Israeli hegemony and maximize control of land. In the city of Jerusalem, the Israeli official policy is to maintain at least a 60% Jewish majority.
This is the stated goal, by the way. Like, none of this is like, oh, it's a conspiracy, it's fake. Especially if you like talk to Israelis, or especially if you live in Israel, straight up, this is how, it's not a secret. It's like very openly the declaration of the state to do this. It's just what it is. It's very public. Obviously, in America, the American side of IDF agitprop routinely brushes past this stuff because they don't want the Americans to also recognize that this is like incredibly fucking violent and just an ethno state. Like, this is just fascism, okay? Is there an argument to be made that America is an apartheid state in regards to its relegation of Native Americans to unfavorable lands? I guess maybe. I mean, America is a genocidal state, but even America doesn't have fucking racial diversity quotas, like where they're like, what we have declared to be white Anglo-Saxon Protestants have to comprise 60% of this territory. Even America, which is a white supremacist country, as we know, and we have talked about, does not have this, okay? Native Americans are still allowed to go wherever they want. Native Americans like are given, territories, and it's not great. And it's certainly, they are victims of genocide, right? And land has been stolen from them. But like the treatment, I've talked about this before, like the treatment of Palestinians as a whole by the state of Israel is incomprehensible. Like it is unfathomable. It is incomprehensible. It's just active apartheid occupying force. One of the, most powerful fucking militaries. Like redlining is nothing in comparison to what fucking Palestinians experience is what I'm trying to say. And that isn't to say redlining is not significant. Okay. That's crazy. Like, we talk about how the American state has bombed entire city blocks where black people live, like in 1985 with the MOVE bombing. We talk about the famous like Tulsa race massacre, where the state turned a blind eye to paramilitaries, white supremacists, like straight up fucking firebombing an entire city block, Black Wall Street. That's a daily part of existence if you're living in fucking Gaza. Like, that's literally just your life all the time. Your life all the time in Gaza. It is the world's largest open air prison. Like, there's no redlining. Like, what we are talking about as far as like a potential one state solution in Palestine where Palestinians and Israelis can coexist is literally like redlining, and everything that we talk about with respect to like how black people are treated, like the Flint water crisis. That is a step up for Palestinians. You understand? Palestinians wish they could be living in circumstances like that. Like, they're not in that situation yet. Okay, Israeli occupation is wrong, but what's the next step here? People live there and they have to live somewhere. It doesn't matter if they're Israelian or Palestinian. Give us an opinion to rally for. I've said this before. First of all, cutting aid, like immediately cutting aid to Israel. Like we give billions of fucking dollars. Okay, my man said Israelian. We have a profound amount of influence over Israel, okay? And vice versa, but we have a profound amount of influence over what happens in Israel, what Israel is doing. We have an incredible amount of negotiating power. Palestinian children are regularly kidnapped in the middle of the night. My cousins have been arrested for months at a time for no reason. They'll literally tear your family apart and physically destroy your home. Zero justice will come. Yeah, I mean, we talked about this last time when Israel was doing the fucking cutting of the tall trees a little bit. They call it what? Trimming the front yard. I think that's what they call it when they bomb the fuck out of Gaza. Just to purge, just to slap the Palestinians around further in their horrific state that they're in already. Yeah, that's what it's called. It's called the Israeli term for it is called mowing the lawn. No one in Israel calls it mowing the lawn. Stop the fake news. Okay, first of all, it is deeply, deeply frustrating. Okay, it's deeply. Okay, cutting aid won't stop shit. Okay, keep doing genocide then. Keep doing fucking genocide. No one in Israel thinks that settler terrorism is a good thing. Maybe except for the radical right Ben Gvir. Get the fuck out of here, dude. Settlements have now become the official position of the government. You're fucking wrong on that. Cutting the aid won't do shit. We're gonna keep fucking doing fascism. Okay, sick. Got it. Nice of you to just fucking say, oh, Israel is more powerful than just like American aid. We'll just keep doing fucking genocide regardless. And then no one in Israel calls it mowing the lawn, stop the fake news is also fucking bullshit. Here it is. Maybe you don't call it that, but it doesn't matter. That's the name of the tactic, is mowing the grass, okay? Gaza invasion is about mowing the grass. So it's developed a new version of its long-held threat management strategy, which is often called mowing the grass. It's a pretty creepy term, as it implies periodically killing people is the same as keeping your lawn groomed. But that's the basic analogy. Hamas, like grass, can't disappear, but it can regularly be cut down to size. And like mowing the grass, it is implied that this is a routine that will be continued forever. It's such a stupid fucking deflection away from the main subject here, okay? That Israel, the Israeli government, routinely, as a part of its national strategy and as a part of its existence since its inception, has regularly and systematically destroyed the lives and livelihoods of Palestinians that originally lived on this land. Instead of coexisting with them, this is what Israel did and continues to do.
So where do all the Palestinians live now? 3.4 million live outside of Israel in the occupied territories, mainly in refugee camps in neighboring countries. 2.5 million Palestinians live in Israel and East Jerusalem, restricted to enclaves that make up around 3% of the entire area. 3 million Palestinians live in the occupied West Bank, but are only allowed to access 40% of the land to live and work. The rest of the area is for the Jewish Israeli settlers only. 2 million...
For the record, that's a real light way of describing what is going on here. Not only that, but Israel regularly, like Israeli forces will regularly set up checkpoints to engage in what is known as collective punishment for the crimes like of children fucking throwing rocks at ongoing cars or whatever. And they will justify it, and they do it literally on purpose. They're like, we are doing this as collective punishment and to, fuck people's lives up. Just like the settlements are strategically positioned in an effort to completely shut off areas where Palestinians live from the rest of the areas where Palestinians live. Because if you have Israelis living in a settlement in the middle of occupied Palestinian territory, then you have to fucking, build checkpoints on those roads and then build separate roads for the Israelis to be able to drive on. So imagine like your neighborhood and all of a sudden like this big dick fucking military force comes in that despises you, that is openly and actively trying to fucking murder you, but in the most torturous way possible. They're not trying to murder you, they're trying to choke you out slowly but surely, year over year over year over year. Sometimes they just straight up bomb you, but other times they're just like building fucking buildings next door, and then all of a sudden, before you know it, now you got fucking tanks and a police and a paramilitary state telling you, get the fuck out of here. Your backyard is now no longer yours. In some instances, your house is no longer yours. Your house now belongs to some American dude that fucking lived in Brooklyn who decided to travel to occupied Palestinian territory and decided your fucking backyard, your living room is his now. Yeah, like Jacob, the guy from Brooklyn, who's like, yeah, I live here now. This is my place. Who then tells you, if I don't do it, someone else will. Someone else will take your fucking place. What are you going to do? Nothing. Because the police force is not protecting you. You don't have anything. You don't have no protection whatsoever. You have no protection. You have no rights. What the fuck soever. Some instances, if you travel outside of the occupied territory, you are not even allowed back in. You got nothing. Oh, here, this is the collective punishment thing I was talking about. I tweeted this before, but here, watch this. This is one of the more nefarious and lightest forms of punishment, but it's so routine. It says, what is the purpose of this checkpoint?
כפר דיר ניזם עומד כרגע על המפטרים כמו שאתה רואה בהמשך הדרך. בתחילת הדרך עומדים בדרך כלל חבורות של ילדים בני 8 עד 16 בערך, פשוט משליכים לבנים, סלעים, קטנים, הרכבים עוברים. חלק מהעניין של הצ'קפוסט שאנחנו עושים פה זה בשביל ליצור לחץ על הכפר עצמו. הלחץ שאנחנו יוצרים על הכפר עצמו בעצם נותן למבוגרים הרגשה של אוקיי, הם מכריעים לעבודה שלהם בבוקר, אנחנו באמת מקשים להם על היום-יום.
We aim to make their lives difficult. Like, we're doing this because we want to hurt them. We want to do, he literally said it. He said, we are doing this because we want to do collective punishment. We want to terrorize this village because some of the little kids threw like pebbles, rocks at a fucking car.
עכשיו הדבר, כל העניין הוא...
בעצם זה סוג של ענישה קולקטיבית על הכפר.
לגמרי. ענישה קולקטיבית של הכפר.
Exactly. He's like, yeah, it's collective punishment. That's what we're here to do. That's just an excuse. If it wasn't for that, they would make other shit up. Yeah, of course. I know. I'm just stating that, like, the excuse in this circumstance to do collective punishment against an entire village of Palestinians who have been robbed of their fucking rights, their liberties for so many fucking years, and their land is literally just is just straight up fucking, yeah, we're doing this because of pebbles.
انت من وين؟
أنا من جوا.
من وين من جوا؟
من بالقدس أنا ساكن.
وين في القدس؟
نيود. أنا يهودي يعني بتعرف.
يهودي.
لي 30 سنة. أنا بشتغل في تسيلي. يعني واحد ماخذين أرض يعني زي ما بقولوا جولتين بافير شي نحن نشمين. كتسور. جولتين بافير شي نحن نشمين. شو يعني من بدش منا؟ يعني الهواء اللي بنتنفسه بيتحكموا فيه.
So what he's saying is he's embellishing, obviously, when he says you control the air we breathe, but it's right. They literally control their water. They control everything. They control every part of their lives, okay? Every part of Palestinian lives are completely controlled by a violent, hostile apartheid state that has occupied their lands. It is so fucking unjustifiable. They control the electricity. They control the fucking water. They will not let them build new wells. They control all their trade. They control all their waste. They control every facet of Palestinian existence, and they build separate fucking streets for them to drive their shitty cars on. So it's not an exaggeration when someone says they control the very air we breathe. Specify Gaza and West Bank, dude? What do you mean specify Gaza and West Bank? Where the fuck do you think the Palestinians live? What are you saying? They do this in the West Bank, which is supposed to be the fucking part that is like literally livable and habitable, okay? They do that in the parts where Palestinians have historically lived, just like the rest of Israel, of course, where Palestinians historically lived. But they do that in the area that they're not supposed to be touching, supposedly. It's the nice part of town, okay? That's where the Palestinians are supposed to live freely, not West Bank, where they're engaging in the collective punishment for the crimes of whatever the fuck they've declared is a criminal act to just literally fucking bomb endlessly. Nothing about any missile against Israel from the Hamas? Yes, bro. I know, bro. What the fuck? Why aren't they talking about that, bro? You're right, bro. What the fuck, bro? Talk about the missile fired from Hamas, bro. I don't know. Maybe they're talking about fucking West Bank right now. Also, remember, this is, oh, we're here. Oh, let's go, dude. Let's fucking go. Let's go. I was expecting this. I don't know how the fuck we haven't gotten to that point yet. One, the Israeli state and the Israeli intelligence agencies are responsible for Hamas, okay? 100,000%. Palestinians have nothing, dumbass. They have nothing. Who the fuck do they go to? The Palestinian authorities are fucking dogs, okay? Straight up. The West Bank Palestinian authorities, dogs. Literally, like last week, the dude came out and was like, Israel belongs to the Jews. Like fucking insane. They hate him. Understandable. Israel personally helped create Hamas too. Yes, exactly. As a counterweight to Socialist Palestine, because Socialist Palestine would be too strong for Israel to oppress. It's so stupid, dude. Israel has Iron Dome, okay? Those Palestinian missiles are bullshit. There's nothing. It is nothing. It's not a real thing. If it wasn't for the missiles, then sometimes they use kites. And they will say, oh, well, these kites have like, this is a kite that they flew over a field and dropped down into our field. Then that's the reason why we have to bomb them. Just like the reason why they are doing collective punishment on that village is not a serious reason. It's because, you know, some fucking kids threw rocks at a car passing by. It's just trying to justify the retaliation. And the reality is, like, they're only doing it for fucking PR. If you go to Israel, if you listen to what the Israeli sentiment is, then they don't need that justification anyway. They just fucking, you know, they're like, yeah, rip them apart. What a fucking dog, dude. As a Palestinian peace activist and the founder of the Jerusalem-based Palestinian Human Rights Monitoring Group, I'm here to set the record straight. Israel is not an apartheid state. What a fucking dog, dude. Like, straight up. Straight up, dude. I am a Palestinian peace activist and the founder of Jerusalem-based Palestinian Human Rights Group. Hashtag BDS is BS. What a fucking piece of shit. Like, fuck this guy. Oh, that Bassam Aid guy is on PragerU? Of course he is, dude. A Palestinian explains Hamas. Fucking piece of shit, dude. I swear to God.
Palestinians, on the other hand, have 4 types of ID cards, if any at all. The kind of ID card you are given determines the level of rights you can enjoy and controls where you can go and what you can do. If you hold a green card, you are subject to military rule. And if you have a green card with a Gaza address, it means you're trapped in a 365 kilometre square open-air prison under Israeli military blockade in place since 2007. Israel controls what goes in and what goes out, from children's toys to medical supplies. 90% of the people have no access to safe drinking water, 47% are unemployed, 56% live in poverty. Palestinians with a Gaza ID are forbidden from going to Jerusalem in the West Bank, even if they have family there. Some people in the West Bank are considered to live there illegally and can be deported immediately to Gaza if found by the army, even if they have been in the West Bank for decades.
For the record, things are changing for the better for Palestinians, okay? Which Palestinians fucking know this already. This is unfathomable, okay? 5 years ago, 10 years ago, this shit is literally unfathomable. I've never in my entire life, never ever seen like this level of not mainstream support, but even this discussion would immediately be like, oh, you're anti-Semitic, fuck off, move on. I've been talking about shit like this for many, many years, okay? There are plenty of people who have talked about shit like this for many, many years, the situation in Palestine. Amnesty International writing a fucking report that says Israel is an apartheid state is something that is so fucking beyond my realm of comprehension. It is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. There are high profile fucking celebrities in America openly fucking declaring that they are siding with Palestine and the liberation of Palestinians. That sort of stuff is like, it's just impossible to comprehend. So it is actually strange to see. At Amnesty International, Israeli apartheid report demonstrates a seismic shift in the human rights world of addressing the oppression of Palestinian people in their entirety, not just the West Bank and Gaza, using decades of research and testimonies to live Palestinian realities. The report represents a nuanced and detailed analysis of the Israeli regime's system of apartheid with an international law framework. The significance of an organization such as Amnesty with a global membership of millions producing this kind of analysis is big, but the international law framework still falls short and its provisions for colonialism settler colonialism are limited. Omitting the context of ongoing settler colonialism in Palestine has serious consequences. It removes the concept of decolonization from the end game. As Lana Tatur once eloquently wrote, by confining ourselves to international law, we risk talking only about racial domination and ignoring colonial domination. Apartheid thus is boiled down to a question of equality and not one of decolonial liberation. This critique is not meant to detract from the rigorous and brave work done by the Amnesty staff. Bravo. Rather, it is to urge us not to remain limited by the confines of international law when imagining our future and collective liberation. So here's the reality, okay? Reports like this come out. Now, what must follow through in the aftermath of this, though, which is important, it's definitely a change of pace. It's definitely a change in the conversation, a change in the narrative, and it's unique and it's very cool that it's happening, okay? What is also important to note here is that ultimately America is going to be able to block everything and anything, you know?
And there's a separation wall and fences built around you since 2002, which Palestinians call the Apartheid Wall. It's 8 meters high in places and 700 kilometers long. That's twice the height of the Berlin Wall and more than 4 times its length. There are separate roads for Israelis and Palestinians, hundreds of checkpoints scattered throughout, not to mention the 54 years of occupation which has devastated the lives of millions of Palestinians. This blue ID is for Palestinians in East Jerusalem. They can travel to the occupied West Bank as well as to Israel, but they are not citizens of Israel. They have only been granted a residency status. This means that they cannot vote in Israeli national elections, and if they leave East Jerusalem for too long, for example, to study or work abroad or in other parts of the occupied West Bank, their residency is revoked.
Can't come back. So can't see your family. Can't come back.
Since 90 Palestinian citizens of Israel, they have been through it all. They are the group that remained in Israel despite the ethnic cleansing in 1948. They lived under Israeli military rule that applied only to them and not Jewish Israelis for 18 years, between 1948 and 1966. They were made citizens but can never become nationals and enjoy equality unless they become Jewish, which the law prohibits. They are the only Palestinians who can run and vote in Israeli elections, and they can move relatively freely. But the inequality against them was never dismantled, and they face daily institutional discrimination.
Palestinians living in Israel that have like Israeli status is the final stage, like is the best stage that you can get to. Obviously, there's still a shitload of oppression that they are faced as well. There's like literally racialized violence against them that they're subjected to. Their storefronts are fucking broken into every time, like, every time Israel decides to mow the lawn. And their treatment is horrifying still, except that's the fucking best you're going to get for the time being in the short term. Like, that's a situation that would be literally like, that would be a situation where people would be like, okay, we have made tangible and serious progress in Palestinian liberation. Like, being secondhand citizens under an Israeli nation state would still be preferable right now to the situation that they're subjected to. How are you anti-Semitic by the Zionists? Are you crazy? Do you know how many fucking anti-Semitic Zionists exist? Bibi Netanyahu could be considered an anti-Semitic Zionist. He literally did Holocaust revisionism, like famously did Holocaust revisionism. There are so many fucking anti-Semitic Zionists, dude. Are you insane? Look at like Viktor Orban and all of Jair Bolsonaro. They are all allies of the state of Israel that have done like actual anti-Semitic conspiracies and anti-Semitic agitprop while running for fucking office. Look at most Republicans. Look at the evangelicals. The point is, the allegiance that evangelicals have with Zionism or with Israel is very understandable. It's just like they don't want Jews to be here. Okay, they're like, yeah, you guys run the world. Just don't do it here. Just do it in Israel. I don't give a fuck. Like, that's the point. And that's one that Bibi Netanyahu has benefited from for a very long time as well. That's why he doesn't have a fucking problem dealing with like openly anti-Semitic people and having them be important strategic allies, because that way he can pump up the fucking fear and say, look, the rest of the world hates you. The rest of the world hates you. You will never be able to coexist there. Come back to Israel. Yeah, that's why I said Amnesty International is surprising for stating this. Does Amnesty oppose Israel's military occupation of Palestine? Amnesty hasn't taken a position on the occupation. Our focus has been on the Israeli government's obligations as the occupying power under international law, but Amnesty has taken no position on the occupation itself. Remember that. That's the reason why I was like, I'm surprised that like a NGO would ever openly state that it's a fucking apartheid state. But it's kind of cool to see them actually say it. It's kind of cool to see them say it, because even this is new. Look, there are Palestinians in my chat right now. Normally, awareness is something that I frown upon, right? Like, oh, awareness without any sort of fucking direct action? Like, what the fuck is that? It's nothing, right? For the lives of millions of Palestinians living in diaspora, or for the lives of millions of Palestinians living under occupation, awareness and like literally coverage from a positive point of view is unique. That itself is unique in comparison to the coverage that you're used to if you're Palestinian. The coverage that you're used to if you're Palestinian is you're a terrorist, fuck off, die. Like, never a mention of what the lived experience of Palestinians is, never a mention of any of that. So this is like a unique thing, and it's actually a step towards progress.
In the West Bank, an average of 18 Palestinian structures were demolished every week in 2020. The same year, Israel issued 1,094 building permits for Jewish applicants.
Like, I remember a time when, like 20 years ago, the Israeli state's position on settler terrorism was like, oh, it's bad. Like, oh, we shouldn't do that. And they would look the other way, right? When Palestinian land was being fucking destroyed, right? And settler colonialism was occurring. Now it's done. They're literally selling land. They're selling Palestinian land on Israeli television and American television too, to be like, come on, come live in occupied Palestinian territory. We've completely moved on from them, even like symbolically stating maybe not the best thing to do. It's maybe not the best thing to do.
This imbalance of rights, justice,
Look at that.
and accountability is never more clear than when a Jewish...
Look at that. Those are children, bro. Those are fucking kids. By the way, greatest democracy, if not the only democracy in the Middle East. Remember, it's always funny when they're just like, yo, fucking, greatest democracy in the Middle East, greatest democracy in the Middle East. This is what they're doing. They do it for vaccine apartheid. They do it in medical apartheid. They do it in every fucking facet of Palestinian existence and Palestinian lives. That's why I'm telling you, like, chat, you can't compare this to anything happening in America. Like, you can compare this to historical atrocities. Kind of looks like if people resisted gentrification, dude, you are stop. That's not gentrification, man. Shut the fuck up. That is such a devastatingly stupid comparison, dude. Oh my fucking God, dude. Americans have no way of comprehending a world outside of their fucking like limited scope, dude. Holy shit. These aren't Palestinians being priced out of their fucking neighborhoods with like a Whole Foods popping up, dude. What the fuck are you talking about? You just watched kids get fucking flashbanged by a military troop. Like just a bunch of kids, and you're like, yo, this is pretty similar to gentrification. Like when fucking, like that's not acceptable either. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. That's why I said like this is so much worse than fucking redlining. This is like Tulsa Massacre, but every day, okay? This is Tulsa Massacre and the move bombing combined, but every day for Palestinians by the only state that is in that region. Palestinian over here, my family who still lives there. Hassan is stating facts. Everything is limited from water to general resources. Saying by my grandmother, they limit the hot water every week to 2 water tanks for the whole house, and it gets cold within a day, so it's cold water the rest of the week. This is one of the millions of human rights violations that Israel has caused, really. Yeah.
We need to speak about the human rights violations that they are suffering. We need to talk about the apartheid, the system of apartheid to which they have subjected. Because by campaigning together, putting pressure on the Israeli state, we can have this system of apartheid dismantled. Join us, join our campaign. Everyone has the power to make a difference.
And obviously, like one of the movements against all the things that you saw is boycott, divest, and sanctions. I love the Democrats fucking coming out in arms against this report, by the way. So fucking sick. Absolutely sick, dude. So tight. So fucking tight.